we'll pull this one from NBC. Buttigieg claps back at Elon Musk for false claims about Helene federal response. So I'm going to jump over to this tweet. Elon Musk posted this text exchange that he had. He said, receive this is about 6 hours ago. Received this 20 minutes ago. The level of belligerent government incompetence is staggering. 2 exclamation points. And he is communicating with someone about what's going on with FEMA. The person he's texting says, they are now about to shut down the airspace to regulate the private choppers. We are riding in to deliver Starlink and supplies. We are pushing back with the Trump team as well to help us, but not looking good. So we've heard a couple reports like this that federal officials on the ground are resisting efforts from skilled private citizens who have the experience, maybe volunteer firefighters and different groups who want to help the thousands of people who have been impacted by the hurricane in North Carolina, in Tennessee, in Georgia. And Elon Musk is one of those people, right? I mean, Starlink is this amazing technology. We have the ability to bring internet access to places that really need it right now. I mean, if you're someone without a cell phone connection, if you don't have Wi-Fi, it's very difficult to even tell sheriffs that you are maybe in trouble and need help. And it seems like this is not something that the federal governments, or at least the people on the ground, were being very cooperative with. But in response, Pete Buttigieg said, no one is shutting down the airspace, and FAA doesn't block legitimate rescue and recovery flights. If you are encountering a problem, give me a call. This, I think, is noteworthy.
Did he give his phone number out?
Apparently, they have
call that man.
We should
call that man.
So Elon Musk ultimately responded to that. Thanks for the call. So I guess Pete Buttigieg called Elon Musk and said, hopefully we can resolve this soon. To me, in addition to all of the hurricane issues, in addition to how important it is to stay conscious of what your neighbors need and the best way to serve other people, I think we should point out the fact that Elon Musk bought X and is now forcing the federal government to take accountability for what's going on. I mean, his post has over 11 million impressions. That's more than most TV shows will ever get. This is an incredible tool, and it's nice to see someone as influential as Elon Musk using it to really draw attention to where.
I think it's interesting. I mean, didn't he help Ukraine with? They were like pumped about him letting Ukraine have Starlink.
Yeah, it went to
Ukraine. Wrong about that? Yeah, but not for a hurricane relief.
No, it doesn't seem like they're being treated the same way.
It's good Jack Dorsey doesn't own Twitter anymore, because he might have put a community footnote under Elon Musk's tweet and tried to censor it since it didn't bode well for the government. So I'm glad Elon's not only opining on Twitter, but he's also the CEO. So.
Not only is Musk, I think most people are aware, like, Musk is not only doing this, but he's also the guy that's, sending a rocket up to the International Space Station to bring the 2 astronauts back that Boeing couldn't manage to do. He's assisted the U.S. government in Ukraine. It's clear that the federal government is hostile to him because they've got all kinds of investigations. They're doing all they can to hinder launching Starship. And it's all because of politics. It's all because Elon Musk owns Twitter and uses the platform to say things that are not complimentary to the federal government. And really, of the social media sites that are at least, of reasonable size, Twitter's really the only one that's not in lockstep with, at least with the mainstream media. Maybe they're not all MSNBC. There's a little hope with, Zuckerberg saying things like, I consider myself a libertarian, which we'll see.
He's still making Instagram into Facebook.
I mean,
anyone can.
I'm not a fan of Meta's properties generally, and the only one that I use with any frequency is Instagram. But it's nice to at least see some kind of recognition that, hey, maybe it wasn't such a great idea to be so complacent. Yeah, well, complacent with the federal government. I mean, it should have been obvious to these companies that the federal government has an agenda that is not aligned with the intended purpose of the federal government, which is to remain neutral. The federal government is not supposed to have an opinion on who gets elected. And they strongly put their, put as much influential information out as they can nowadays. Mm-hmm. And that's something that is a problem. So, and to see the federal government looking to, a private citizen that has so much to offer to the country when it comes to, things like Starlink and things like disaster relief and stuff like that, to look at him as to be so hostile to him, I think it clearly puts the federal government in a bad light, or at least this administration.
FEMA is running damage control right now on Twitter. If you go to their page, they have a whole bunch of things. Rumor has it as this, they're rumors, it's not true. Starlink comes in, what happens? We get stories on the ground from people because of internet access. They can show you video in real time, this is what is happening.
Yeah, I think that's important to point out. I mean, if people are not able to contact their loved ones, they're definitely not in a position to contact their local news reporters or to post on their own X accounts and give on the ground feedback. I want to call attention to one thing that Pete Buttigieg said, which is the FAA doesn't block legitimate rescue and recovery flights. It reminds me of what Biden was saying a little bit earlier this week. President Biden said, I'm going to go down, but I'm going to wait until it's not disruptive to emergency services. And there is one version of this that is honorable, right? Like, it's not about his prowess. It's about making sure people get the things they need. On the other hand, I don't think anyone believed that was genuine. Is this sort of a legitimate concern for the government that its search and rescue should take priority over things like Starlink? Or is it actually just kind of a dodge because both things could be happening at the same time?
Well, that method didn't work for the border, and there was emergency down there, right? Mm-hmm. Their presence, or their absence of their presence, didn't really fix that. And on top of this, these people need help. And I can't help but think there is that saying, if we don't pay taxes, who's going to fix the roads? I'm looking at Americans coming and saving Americans, and the government getting in the way of that.
I think it's also a tale as old as time, because private entities usually work much more efficaciously to get things done because there's not the bureaucracy that you have with government entities. And I think the government takes umbrage at that and gets angry when they see a private entity doing something better than they can. So not only is the government slow moving and not doing anything, they then lambast the private entity that's doing it better than them because it makes them look bad. And so I think we're seeing that play out with the border, as he mentioned, and now with Elon Musk.
You're reminding me that there's this report out that Dolly Parton, who's famously from Tennessee, very devoted to the state, just gave, I think it's $1 million to start hurricane relief efforts because her response is basically like, these are my people, these are my neighbors. And I think that altruism from the private sector, the individual wealthy person doing something, is important. And maybe our dependency on the federal government has sort of lulled us out of that mentality that it's our responsibility.
Right, it's like a shining example of like the success of capitalism over government control, and they don't like that.
Mm-mm. Do you think that Americans are going to pay attention to this for the next 6 weeks? Or are we afraid this story is going to fade to the background?
I don't think that I'm not sure about 6 weeks, but I don't think that there's the option of not paying attention for the next couple of weeks because, these rescue efforts going to be going on for a while. I've heard that the death toll is 200, but there's probably over 1,000 missing. And those people that are missing are, I mean, it's terrible to say, but they're not likely just like wandering in the woods. Mm-hmm. Entire towns were wiped off the map. Mm-hmm. And if you know anything about the topography of the area, you're not building your towns on the tops of the mountains. They're built alongside these rivers and streams that run through the valleys and the hollers of North Carolina. So the water that came and swept these towns away, like it's nowadays, unfortunately, or at this point in time, this far after the initial deluge of water, it's not a rescue effort; it's a recovery effort.
Yeah. And what does rebuilding look like in this area? I was listening to this report yesterday that was saying basically this is the Blue Ridge Mountains, I believe. It's a lot of second homes. Like there are houses that were destroyed that are vacation homes, but that means that the blue-collar, working-class people who live there are often displaced and don't really have the resources or industry to sort of move on and recover. I mean, if Asheville, North Carolina is struggling and that's the nearest big city, these more rural towns that don't have the housing inventory because it's partially vacation and because it has now been destroyed, what are they going to do?
Hurt their economy really bad.
And I think this brings out another point, which is reality over rhetoric. And lots of times I think the left likes to showcase lofty rhetoric about how much they care about people. But then when we actually see something happen where something needs to be done, they're not doing much. And so I think they've really become experts at mastering the rhetoric. But when it comes to reality, they really don't do much. And so it's good that private entities and people like Elon Musk and Dolly, as you mentioned, can kind of step in, because that's all we have, not just with the Democrats, but sometimes with Republicans, is just rhetoric. But I think we see it much more often on the left.
Yeah. I wonder if this concern, I think you guys have all heard this too, that so many of these counties that were impacted are red. They're likely counties that Trump will carry in the election. If they will feel more disenfranchised now that the recovery efforts are slow, but then also feel like they don't have outlets. I mean, I don't totally know what the plan is for voting in these areas. If you don't really have electricity for homes, I'm not sure your polling place is standing.
Yeah, I've heard some people, like left-leaning people, saying some pretty atrocious things that it's a positive for the for the Democrats and stuff. And I mean, whereas they may be correct, it may be hard to get votes, people from that area voting. The fact that it comes to mind is kind of just gross, And,
By any means necessary. I mean, that is their mantra, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to look at tragedies and this wouldn't be the first one of the year where they have looked at it and went, great, we're glad that's happening to you. I'm obviously making an allusion to the attempt on Donald Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania in July. And, as we all know, but Trump is returning to the same spot this weekend.
The balls.
Right. I mean, it is interesting that at this time that we have this I would say national disaster, right? From what I know, this hurricane is comparable to Katrina in terms of loss of life. I mean, we are still waiting on numbers. Like Phil said, it's thousands/unknowns amount of people that are still missing. And this is Donald Trump kind of embodying resiliency. He's saying, I'm going to go back and I'm going to keep pushing and I'm going to keep fighting. And I think that's interesting when there are so many Americans who are probably right now thinking like, they're in very desperate times.
The response to Katrina was also a lot more heartfelt for the entire country. We all came together during Katrina. Didn't musicians make songs and sing together?
Yeah.
And there were all these
different
reliefs.
times.
It was different times, right?
So different.
The last time I was here, we were talking about what fixes the country because it's a generational issue. And I mentioned it has to be something like a 9/11 or a major disaster that pulls everyone together. And Tim's like, I don't think that'll even work anymore. And here we are. We see a disaster that's affected both sides of the fence. And where are the songs?
I don't think that.
Yeah, Phil, where are the songs?
Well, there are songs.
I'm just kidding.
I don't think that a natural disaster would pull people together the way that an attack would. So hypothetically, if there was an attack that had thousands of people that passed away, that were victims, that might do it.
What if one side just blames the other side for
Well, I mean, that's possible.
continued infighting?
That's
possible.
I think we'd need
pattern.
aliens, something
Interesting.
totally different.
Well, I saw this post on
Project
X
Bluebeam,
today.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Send it.
I saw this post on X today that was like comparing and contrasting the New York Times. And the New York Times, during Katrina basically had wall-to-wall coverage of what was going on, the recovery efforts and the responses and all of this stuff. And as far as I know, the New York Times covered the hurricane and moved on to talking about January 6th again. I don't know if you're paying them to do that. I know you want to keep it alive, but it's sort of ridiculous.
Oh,
that
for us is good for us.
we have this moment to be like, look, this is the thing that needs attention. J.D. Vance made this comment during the debate. They're talking about the gun violence epidemic, and he was like, yes, we should talk about this, especially in inner cities, which does not get the coverage. I mean, news media coverage for some of these serious issues can make or break. It can really change the lives of people impacted by it. Why the New York Times would be turning its eyes away for something that happened several years ago seems like a disservice to the country. Thanks for watching this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. on this channel. Subscribe and we'll see you all there.